Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, with a presentation that will point the finger of blame for World War I on Austria-Hungary and Russia, the two countries that meddled most in the Balkans. Now I've looked at the Balkans and nationalism as factors in another presentation. I've also considered alliances in another presentation too. So I'll not repeat things here, except to emphasise the importance of them. The two countries seem destined to clash over the Balkans, and their alliances seem destined to drag in the other great powers. Now, if you only looked at a map of 1914, you would think that Austria-Hungary must have been a truly great power. Its territory extended from southern Poland to the north of Serbia, taking in a swath of Central and Eastern Europe. However, a great power it was not. Its greatest weakness lay in its multinational nature. Austria-Hungary had at least 18 nationalities, and German speakers didn't even account for a quarter of its population. The army used German for its main commands, but otherwise officers were required to use the language of the troops under their command. Austria had already lost its Italian states, its influence over the states of the German Confederation, and it had to relinquish a huge chunk of autonomy to Hungary in the Ausgleich or Compromise of 1867. It faced increasing pressure from all its nationalities, but most significantly from Slavs. My point? It couldn't afford to lose anything more, or it was finished as a great power. Austria-Hungary was like a poker player, wondering whether to stick or twist. There were those, Franz Joseph and Franz Ferdinand amongst them, who thought holding on to what they still had was the best that could be achieved. Others, however, saw opportunities in the collapsing Ottoman Empire for Austria-Hungary to show the world it was still a power to contend with, and at the same time to rally the empire and overcome its domestic problems. Count Conrad von Hotzendorf, the chief of the General Staff from 1906, was one who thought it should do so. Think about this when you consider Austria-Hungary's policy in the Balkans and its reaction to Franz Ferdinand's assassination. Turning to Russia, like Austria-Hungary, it looked a great power. It covered over 20 million square kilometres, 1/6 of the world's land surface. Its population was huge, 166 million, greater than those of Germany, Britain and France combined. But Russia was still a long way behind Germany, with its coal production only at 13% of Germany's, iron at 23% and steel at 26%. But perhaps the most important fact is that over 80% of Russia's population were peasants, and less than 20% of them were literate, when in Britain 95% were literate. The unpalatable truth for Russia was that throughout the 19th century, Russian power was in relative decline, though I would add, unlike Austria-Hungary, it did at least have potential. Still, defeat in the Crimean War in 1856, the humiliation at the Treaty of Berlin in 1878, and the debacle of the Russo-Japanese War in 1905-06 reflect the state it was in. But Russia not only wanted an increasing influence in the Balkan region for its own benefit, control of Constantinople and the Straits to give its exports a route into the Mediterranean, but it saw itself as the protector, be it from Ottoman or Austro-Hungarian abuse, of Slavs, and so of Serbia. So Russia encouraged Serbian nationalism and looked to make gains in the Balkans itself, fishing in troubled waters. So we can see that both countries were struggling to maintain their status as a great power, and felt that any sign of weakness could be fatal to that status. And when we look at the July crisis, we can say that Austria-Hungary sought war, a war that would eradicate the Serbian threat once and for all. Its ultimatum is clear evidence of this. What's more, it ignored other options. It could have instigated a quick punitive war with Serbia. Russia may have made a few noises, but there was a good chance that it would have done nothing more. Or it could have accepted a conference to sort things out. Instead, it allowed tensions to build, and it involved Germany. We make a lot of Germany's blank cheque, but it was Austria that asked for it, knowing the risks this had of escalating a local Balkan issue into a major European war, believing that with German backing it would be invincible. And whilst there was a great deal of sympathy for it following the assassination, both Russia and France had warned it not to push too hard in dealing with Serbia. But Austria-Hungary was too fearful of its own future. The collapse of Ottoman rule may have presented an opportunity for gains in the Balkans, but it was more likely to generate growing demands for nationalism amongst its own people. And that meant a larger, more powerful Serbia, which would only put more pressure on its own multinational empire. Plus, there was the Russian factor. If Austria-Hungary lost influence in the Balkans, Russia's influence would only grow. But it was unable to deal with the matter on its own, and so it dragged in Germany. What then of Russia in the July crisis? Once it got wind of the humiliating terms of the Austro-Hungarian ultimatum, which would have so weakened Serbia, it encouraged the Serbs to resist their demands. And on the other side of that particular coin, a stronger Serbia could only improve Russia's hopes of gains in the region. It was also the first of the major powers not directly involved to mobilise, and it mobilised against Germany as well as Austria-Hungary. And this put tremendous pressure on Germany, whose Schlieffen Plan relied on a slow response from Russia to give it time to defeat France first. Indeed, Russian troops invaded German territory on the same day that German troops invaded neutral Belgium. So that's Austria-Hungary and Russia covered, even if briefly. There's more detail to what I've covered here, but you might try my website, History Made Easier, and you might be interested in tutorials. If you are, get your parents to contact me at historymadeeasier@gmail.com, and we'll see if we can work something out. But for now, let me simply thank you for listening and wish you the very best of luck in your studies. Cheers.